Hi, this is Kyle from APS, and I'm here to show you how to measure lifelines for sailboats for replacement. And I'm going to show you from start to finish. Before we start, it's important to realize what lifelines are truly designed to do. While they are helpful to just grab if you happen to trip walking down the deck of the boat, it's not their primary purpose. What they really are is a last resort to keep somebody on the boat in a bad situation. So if you can imagine a 200-pound man on the port side getting washed by a wave across the deck and getting thrown into the lifelines, what we're talking about is many thousands of pounds of dynamic pressure on the system, and it is a system. So where does that energy go? They are designed so that the energy immediately transfers to the bow and stern pulpit where that fall can be stopped. So the stanchions are kind of there to keep them at the right height, and while they're tensioned every day, keeps them in place. But when you hit them, stanchions are going to flex, and what you want to do is immediately transfer all of that energy to the pulpits, and that's what's going to stop you from going overboard. Okay, first is you need to identify the wire type that you have and the wire type you want to use on your new lifelines. Now, isn't that beautiful? That is 7x7 wire with a PVC, a vinyl coating. Looks beautiful, easy to grab onto, nice in the hand. Why don't we like that? Well, the PVC holds the water in here, and you get all kinds of corrosion. You can see that the corrosion, the rust is basically just busting out of here. And if we were to peel this back, you would see the wires completely just crusted or coated in rust. And I can't visually inspect at any point to see how the different strands are holding up. Do I have broken strands? So we actually no longer make vinyl coated lifelines, and you'll notice that organizations like ORC and many other offshore race councils now have regulations preventing or prohibiting the use if you're going to be compliant. So say goodbye to those and say hello to uncoated 1x19 wire available in 4 diameters. We've got 1/8 inch, 5/32, 3/16, and quarter. And this is the way new lifelines are made. Water's not held in, and they're easy for visual inspection. Okay, now let's review the different configurations for lifelines and the hardware they use. Now remember, we're trying to transmit the tightness, the energy, to the bow and the stern pulpit by adjusting these tight. Now this is a simple one-piece system. Turnbuckle, say, up on the bow. This runs all the way through the stanchions to the stern pulpit. And because it's one piece, you only need one adjuster to tighten the entire thing and transfer that tension to both the stanchions. Okay, the next would be a two-piece system. So if you could imagine, again, the turnbuckle is at the bow, and at the last stanchion on the boat towards the stern, I've installed a double gate eye here and a pelican or gate hook which would attach to the stern pulpit. And because of the stanchion, when I adjust this, I'm pulling the wire that way and I'm pulling it against the stanchion. So I'm not able to adjust this area because the stanchion's holding this hardware. And in this area, I would use the gate eye or pelican hook adjustment right here to tighten that. And then the last configuration, this is probably the most common that we see. And this is going to be a 3-part system. And starting with the bow with the turnbuckle, and we've got a center gate. The center gate is used generally when you have 2 stanchions that are about 24 inches apart, give or take. We're trying to reduce the open area where you could fall through when you're boarding or provisioning at the dock. When you undo the gate, because this bears against the stanchion on either side, the rest of the system stays pretty taut, such that if you were to trip, you could grab hold of the lifelines and stay on the boat. As you get ready to leave and head to sea, Of course, make sure you get this closed. Tape around these gate eyes so that they can't accidentally come open. Now, when it comes to adjustment, because we have three sections, we have to be able to adjust them separately. As I said before, this section is going to bear against, as I adjust this turnbuckle, pull the wire this way, and it's going to bear against the stanchion. And then down here, because I've got an isolated section, this third section, this is going to, as I adjust this micro adjuster, it's going to pull the wire this way and pull it against the stanchion. So with neither of these have I been able to tension the center, and I'll tension that with my third adjuster, which is on the gate eye. Okay, the first thing we need to do prior to measuring is on the boat, we need to get our lifeline set to their proper tensioned length. And before we can even do that, we need to make sure that the support system, the stanchions and the pulpits, are in good shape. We don't want to be making new ones for bent components, things that are out of alignment. So first thing you need to know is very seldom with lifelines are boats symmetrical. So you're going to be setting up both sides of the boat. Don't make any assumptions. And the first thing is to inspect your stanchions and make sure they haven't been damaged because you've hit a piling or something and bent it. Plus, they're going to be compromised in terms of their strength. So what you want to do is make sure that your stanchions are coming out of their bases straight. There's no kinks in them. You want to inspect your bow pulpit and your stern pulpit, your push pulpit, and make sure that those haven't been bent because somebody's fallen really hard against the lifelines in a previous sail. And also inspect the attachment point to your pulpit and make sure that those welded on eyes or rings haven't been bent. If you've got any damage, either replace your stanchions or have them repaired. Have a marine welder deal with your pulpits before you start. All right, assuming everything's where it needs to be structure-wise, we want to go back to our component pieces and we want to tighten everything up equally. Again, what we want is as soon as these lifelines are called to use, somebody falls against them, we want them to immediately transfer that load to the stern and bow pulpit. And that's not going to happen if you've got lifelines that are just kind of dangling there or just lightly tensioned. The person's going to continue to go towards overboard, and you're probably going to get some stanchions that get pretty mangled. So what you want to do is go to each component part. Over here, use your micro adjuster. Tighten this up. When you're at your gate, tighten your gate. And again, down here at the long part, tighten the turnbuckle. And you want that done equally. You don't want one pulling the stanchion this way and one pulling a stanchion that way. You want everything to be in column there. Now, what's proper tension? Now, at a minimum, you should be able to go to the longest unsupported spot on the boat of your lifeline, say the two stanchions that are farthest apart. You go to the middle point on the wire. You apply approximately 10 pounds of pressure. And if that wire travels more than 2 inches, you're not even meeting the minimum. I'm not really happy with that little tension. I like mine to be taut and to the point where it is a bit of pressure to get the pelican hook to close, but it's not impossible. If you can just go up to your pelican hook or your gate hook and just snap it without there being any resistance, you probably don't have your lifelines tight enough. Okay, now that we've got everything tensioned, we're ready, just about to take them off the boat. With our tensioners all adjusted, everything's taut, we're going to need to reproduce this once we take them off the boat. So you can either use a marking method using a Sharpie to show where the threads stopped right at the body. You can put tape around it, or you can measure the exposed threads, making sure that that's equal distant on both sides. If it isn't, you'll have to get both of those measurements. And that way, when you go to put these back together, you'll be able to use those measurements and reproduce that turnbuckle length. Same thing here, same thing here. Okay, so as you start to disassemble this by completely taking your turnbuckle apart, As you take each piece off, you're going to want to grab, I always use white duct tape, and you're going to want to mark these. Port or starboard, is it an upper or a lower, and what part in the component system is it? This is the forwardmost piece. Okay, we're off the boat and we're getting ready to do our measurements. The first thing you need to do is go to our website and download these measurement sheets for lifelines. You can find it at our advisor post, How to Measure Lifelines, or on any of our Lifeline product pages. This makes it super easy. There's 3 to choose from. There's one for a 1-piece assembly. We have another one for a 2-piece, and in this case, a 3-piece assembly. All right, with that in hand, well, what are we going to be measuring specifically? Well, we're going to go piece by piece, and we're going to be measuring from bearing surface to bearing surface. If you're not familiar with that or comfortable measuring sailboat wire rigging, I strongly suggest that you visit our post on how to measure wire rigging. And that'll explain the bearing surfaces to you and how we use the tape measures to a fixed point. So in this case, our bearing surfaces for this micro adjuster are going to be right down here. And then for the turnbuckle on the other end of this assembly, it'll be right down here with the pin out. Now the middle here, where's the bearing surface? This is where lifelines get maybe a little confusing, or we've made some assumptions. In this assembly over here, the bearing surface is where this assembly bears against the stanchion. So when I'm adjusting this, I'm pulling this wire that direction against the stanchion. So right here is our bearing surface. And I'm going to use that for measuring this distance. And then I'm going to use it over here when I measure the gate. Now, where's the bearing surface over here? The easy go-to is, oh, it's right here. Well, not necessarily. When you're doing lifelines, again, it's to the eye. And when we're adjusting this turnbuckle, we're pulling this assembly against the stanchion. And so the bearing surface is here, not here. This is a really common mistake, and even some riggers forget about that. So we don't want to neglect that distance there. So measuring from bearing surface to bearing surface, it's this section to the bearing surface here. The middle, the gate, is from the same point to this gate eye where it bears against the stanchion. And then reusing that point, it's down this assembly and to the turnbuckle right here. That's it. Now, if you were going to maybe substitute this micro adjuster and you wanted to lash your lifeline on, we would substitute this, swage that on, and what you would want to do is reduce this length by 4 inches, and that gives you 4 inches to run your lashings back and forth between the eye and the stanchion. All right, that's it. Okay, now you know how to measure lifelines like a pro. And if you're ready to go ahead and place an order, guess what? You don't have to box all this up and send it in to us and have us measure it. You can just scan and email these to us. For these and other how-to information, visit us at apsltd.com.